We don't like white people because of how they treated us.
White person. So white people are incapable of honesty. We're misaligned with the reality.
Yes.
But I don't think we're causing that.
We would like for you to leave.
In this video, we are going to watch conservative political commentator John Doyle go to a HBCU, which means historically black college and university, to do a change my mind, with the premise being America is not racist. And I don't know too much about John, but he is a very smart guy by the looks of things, a really good debater. And also, he's got some balls doing this because, like you're about to see, it starts off okay, but as the video progresses, these students just get more and more aggressive as the crowd gets bigger until it becomes unbearable. So respect to John, and make sure, guys, if you do get a spare few hours, to check out the full video on his YouTube channel. Let's get into it.
So I just want to know your thoughts. What do you think racism is?
I think, as I described earlier, I think racism is basically in-group preference. I think it's prejudice.
Never experienced that, so obviously.
That's not true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've experienced racism as a white man in America. Think about it. Yeah, I can. Sure. Again, we're going to have to keep this more individualized, otherwise we're not going to be able to be productive.
The difference between black people not liking white people and white people not liking black people is if you're white and you're racist, you don't like me because I'm black. If I'm black and I don't like you because you're white, I don't like you because of my history with white people and because of my ancestors' history with white people.
I don't think that's true.
That is true. We don't like white people because of how they treated us. Like, because of what we see in the history books. Every time you open a history book and there's a black person in it, there's always something about what a white person did.
Yeah.
That's all we see. White people who don't like me because I'm black. I'm not, they can't say that I'm loud. They can't say that I commit crimes. I don't do any of that. I literally I say to myself when I go to black people, they don't like me because I'm black.
Basically, we had to start over. Well, we had to start from the bottom. Y'all were already up here.
Yeah.
And to catch up. Would you say, in your opinion, we have caught up yet?
I don't think so, but I do think it's true that generational wealth doesn't really translate well between generations. Like, if you look even between like white Americans with generational wealth, if you take like a white person who's in the top 20% of income, that person is relatively likely to stay there. But if you take like a black person who was born into the top 20% of income, for whatever reason, that black person has an equally likely chance of slipping into the bottom 20% as they do remaining in the top 20%. So even when black Americans have that generational wealth you're talking about, it's not, well, I like to have research so I can come have these conversations.
What's your point?
I'm not wrong, though. No, this is from the Bureau of Justice Statistics, Bureau of Labor Statistics. So white people are incapable of honesty. We're misaligned with the reality.
Yes. All the history books are lies. They don't even tell like the real type shit.
I agree with that. Quick, just about the slavery thing. You know that America wasn't the country that invented slavery,
we
right?
invented chattel slavery. Every country had slavery. We invented chattel slavery.
The
When
Americans,
chattel slavery
all
was
European
invented,
countries that
America
Just
colonized
because
the
I didn't invent it
Americas.
doesn't make
all
it
the other
less
listen, all the other countries had domestic slavery.
Yeah.
You know, different slavery. We had slavery to where like you're tearing down black people, basically like
Right.
a genocide in a way.
Right. So those
You don't think that's bad?
And that's not the only thing they've done to just our people.
I got next.
those slave routes weren't invented by Americans. The slave routes were capitalized on.
Okay, but they were using
We're talking about the British.
So let me just make sure we understand here, because oftentimes I know that this is like kind of dispelled throughout history. We arrived on African land and purchased slaves that were already enslaved by warring African tribes. We know that, right? It's not like roots where we were going into the jungle and they were bringing them over. Right, right.
That was slavery by tribal warfare. Here, people within the Americas were literal property. Within African slavery, that was slavery by prisoners of war, by tribal warfare.
Is that a better kind of slavery?
No.
Okay, to me it sounds like you're trying to justify that fact.
Oh, no.
You can actually.
Well, that's what it sounds like.
Well, what I meant with our conversation was, I don't think it's, if I may, I don't think it's fair to condemn America for slavery, when even in terms of the Western Hemisphere, most of the slaves that were coming from Africa were going to South America. We got like a fraction of them, and we also fought a war where all of that generational wealth that you're referring to in the South was set to zero. 600,000 white people died to free black slaves. And
you know how many black people died?
There was a lot there, so let's touch on a few key points. Firstly, although John's doing a really good job, I think he'll look back on this and probably make a few adjustments in the sense that he could probably control the situation and the space a lot better by not engaging with the people who are constantly trying to interject. And Stephen Crowder does this actually really well. He is fully dismissive of anybody who's not sitting directly next to him that's trying to interrupt. Secondly, they clearly believe that America, the country who fought a war to abolish slavery, is a uniquely evil country when it comes to this matter. And this is a historically outrageous claim to make, because there were many different countries and empires throughout history in which slavery has been ubiquitous, by the way, who practiced extremely brutal and barbaric forms of slavery. And some of these practices included castrating slaves so that they couldn't breed, killing their infants in fear of future retribution, and also just killing the slaves when they weren't valuable anymore. This is historically just factual, and the fact that these students don't have an idea or even a clue about this is absolutely ridiculous and a terrible indictment on the education system. And not even to mention there that slavery still exists today, with more slaves in captivity today than there ever was in history. And I've got some wild stories about my own travels and the places that I've been to and some of the practices that happen there, but that's probably more for a podcast. And thirdly, these people are openly racist and they don't even realize it. They're standing there hooting and hollering about racism whilst at the same time being overtly racist. She is literally saying that she doesn't like white people. And her logic is a whole different story. She's saying that if a white person doesn't like her, it's because she's black. But the reason why she doesn't like white people is because of something that she saw in a textbook. And it's not because they're white and it's not racist. Okay, gotcha. But moreover, this argument that she's making about the fact that she saw this historical injustice being perpetrated upon somebody who looks like her in a textbook, so therefore she doesn't like the people who look like the people doing the injustice. That's her logic. Let's take that idea and do a little thought experiment with that. Just imagine that the rest of the world allowed that line of thinking to govern our interactions. If this is an acceptable way of thinking, then the British, the Greeks, and the Spanish should hate the Romans. The Chinese, the Iraqis, the Iranians, the Turkish would all hate the Mongolians. The Indians should hate the Dutch, the British, and the Portuguese, and also the Mongolians, and the list goes on. This game that we are playing in our culture, where we judge people upon the historical wrongs of the people who looked like them, and this determines the value of our voice and our opinion in our modern culture, is an incredibly stupid one. History is a deeply complex and blood-stained wormhole of never-ending wars, conquest, slavery, and human tragedy. Guys, before we get to the next part, if you don't mind chucking a like on this video, helps me out with my algorithms a little bit. And also, if you're new to this channel, if it's your first time here, or if you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, then I would appreciate it if you did so. Would love to have you a part of the greatest community on YouTube, and that is the Rattlesnake TV community. Back to the clips.
You go to the feminist thing asking about for them to be angry and clueless, as you call them.
I was asking them about abortion rights.
See, that's what I'm saying.
Wait,
Don't feed
went
into
to
that.
an abortion
I'm not feeding into
Yep.
that. No, we're not going to feed into that.
Called them angry and clueless.
Yeah.
And they got upset.
Well,
So you
yeah.
provoked them.
I didn't actually.
No, you did.
If you haven't watched the video, if you watch the video, you'll
I'm not
see.
watching that shit.
So then you don't get to have an opinion on it.
I absolutely do have an opinion on it. This is my
On
life.
something you didn't watch?
You get to have an opinion on that?
On what?
You're not black, so do you get to have
I was going to say.
Yeah.
No, you're not.
Because you can't have an opinion on a video you didn't watch. I grew up with black people. I live with black people.
Where'd you go to high school?
I always hang out actually with like a pretty diverse group of kids.
What did that consist of? Can you be more specific?
We had like a fat white kid. We had like a few black kids. Actually, all my best friends, come to think of it, growing up, because the neighborhood I lived in.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Do it.
I got a question. I
have a question. Why do you think your proximity to blackness equates to your knowledge with
black issue.
That's a good
I don't think it means everything, but I think it means something. I think
As far as what?
Well, I think if I were talking about it with absolutely no experience dealing with black people in my life, that would be ridiculous. Maybe
But
if
you're not going through what they
Take
were.
racism though.
we gotta.
Let her finish.
I think at least having grown up, and again, you know, it's kind of a buzzword, but I've had black friends my whole life. I think that at least gives me something. You know what's interesting too? If you talk to like racist people from like 100 years ago and ask them if they have black friends, they'd be like, hell no. So like your threshold of what means racism,
Did you experience
not
the
100 years
things
ago.
that your black friends experienced?
Exactly.
I don't think they really experienced a whole lot of injustice.
Did you ever ask? Did you ask them that?
Wait, why do you think that though?
Well, I mean, I was friends with them.
But you weren't
I
them
grew
though.
up with them.
So you didn't know
Well,
that.
maybe that's because where they were surrounded at. Maybe that could be true.
Did you not think about the little things, like maybe when you guys were all in the store, they were looking at your friends and not you? Did you think about implicit things like that?
When you learn how to drive,
No, they would have said
tell you
something.
what's happening.
I'm sorry. What was your answer? I'm sorry.
No, they would have said something about
No,
it.
they wouldn't. No, they wouldn't. No, they wouldn't.
My black friends, yes, they
You
would.
wanna know how? Because I'm black. I'm black. I know because I'm black.
You're talking about my
I know
friends I grew up with. I know them better than you know them.
And you're
so.
white. You're white. You're white.
White.
And I am black. So I would know maybe a little
Okay.
bit more because I'm black. I've been through that
I grew up
experience.
in
I'm so glad that he brought this point up and he defended himself about this matter, because this is one that I've always found so incredibly frustrating. When people are mocked for saying that they have friends of different ethnicities, therefore they're not racist. For me, that's a perfectly logical statement to make. Growing up with and having friends of different ethnic backgrounds will allow you to understand and have a much more intimate respect for them and their culture. On the other hand, if you are insulated from other cultures, and if you just grow up with people in the same neighborhood from you with the similar families, similar cultural backgrounds, and life trajectories, then you are far more likely to have ill feelings towards the other. And I'm extremely grateful for my life experiences in this regard. I mean, I grew up in the western suburbs of Melbourne, which is a pretty rough area, and there were immigrants all around me from Somalia, Sudan, Lebanon, Turkey, Vietnam, you name it. And a lot of my best friends growing up were from immigrant backgrounds. And in my adult life, I've traveled a lot and made friends from all around the globe, which is just an incredible blessing. And whenever I meet people from a different culture, I'm so thrilled to be able to just sit with them and learn about them and who they are and how that has been created by a synthesis of life experience and culture. And I can honestly say that this is one of the most enriching experiences that you can possibly have as a human being. And unfortunately, what we are seeing in this video is that these students are in fact the closed-minded and insulated ones. In fact, they are severely insulated. And I genuinely do pity them for this, because this closed-mindedness is sure to rob them of some of life's greatest joys. And the next gentleman that actually comes along is rather admirable in my opinion. These people are all currently just shouting. None of them are saying anything very logical. And then he comes along and he sits down with John and tries to have a respectful conversation and go slightly against the grain.
So I do got so this segment is America's Not Racist, right?
Yes, sir.
So how do you describe like what's it called, like the red line and things, you know, because a lot of our wealth, a lot of economics have been to like putting us down. You feel me? Like we weren't allowed to invest in actual real estate.
Yep.
We weren't allowed to go out and do that. So, and when we did go do it, the country took that away from us, right? So if the basis on which America is founded, now I'm not saying that you are racist, one individual is racist, but I'm saying that the system that this country has been founded on, the very cornerstone is corrupt at its core.
Yeah.
We look at the police and imprisonment, like she was saying, we get into it, mass incarceration, right? We look into how it really goes into, how it really started popping off, right? Where they start taking out of our schools, teaching us the skills and the jobs we need, the deindustrialization of our country, right? We gonna talk about it, right? So we talk about how y'all are taking jobs away from us, from our grandparents, right?
Yeah.
This 70s, this 60s, 70s, right? So we get into it, we lose the job, and then it's proven fact. CIA has confirmed they've been pumping drugs into our neighborhood, and then we're gonna criminalize the addiction, right?
Yeah.
So then, and then along with the prison system, if the prison systems ain't racist, why is it that the privatized prison systems, to gain money from the government, they have to be at max capacity? Right? And so we have this, so we see police quotas where they have to go out. They're giving out the tickets, they're giving, and which with the black people, for the simple traffic violation, we see it escalated way farther. We see it. Exactly.
For a traffic stop.
Right? And our prison system isn't based on reformation, on rehabilitation in the communities where we've had everything taken from us, where we've had everything done to us, and we're merely trying to survive. That's what it comes down to. Y'all try to criminalize the survival of it when you've taken away everything that we've, and I'm not saying you specifically, but I'm talking about the people in power, where they've taken away our job, where they've introduced this addiction, where to feed my family, I got two choices. I can either go hustle this, or I can smoke it, because I can't feed my family, right? So then we gonna criminalize addiction, which we now see reaches out to white people a lot. We see the pill epidemic, right?
Yeah, but the difference is when it was in black communities, y'all over-policed those communities and arrested everybody. But when white kids started doing pills, it was the opium epidemic, and now we have to fix the pharmaceutical companies.
There we go. There we go.
Hey, bro. Hey, chill,
we having a productive conversation, bro.
The property, cuz. I'm not touching you.
No, you're talking,
We're taking this conversation while we got the lawyers. We got the lawyer out here to get them out of jail.
Why not have them?
Listen, it's a conversation.
There's no point getting a lawyer if they got permission to.
Right, there's no need for that.
Y'all resorting to anger instead of actually just sitting down and just having a conversation. We trying to have a productive conversation.
If you guys don't like it, why don't you just walk away?
I can't talk. Just like you don't.
Because
this video is going. But and for the slight chance that my point is put on their channel, someone watching it someone else might be like, okay, he might have a good point. That's it. I'm not going to be able to make that change. And all it takes is a seat for someone to be like, you know what? He was speaking a good point. Let me go look into it. Let me go research something.
So respect to this young man for trying to have a respectful conversation, and he certainly brought up some good points. And there has definitely been racism throughout history and many different policies that were completely disastrous for the African American community. But I think that their animus is completely misguided. And this is why Candace Owens is really on the ball with this whole Blexit movement. She had her eyes opened up by the works of the brilliant academic Thomas Sowell, who discussed things such as LBJ's Great Society Act and the fallibility of the welfare state, which these stats, when I read them, almost knocked me off my chair. In the 1960s, 100 years after slavery had ended, 22% of black kids were growing up with one parent in the home. And then 30 years after the welfare state was introduced, that number had tripled. And this is because the welfare state financially incentivizes women to not have a father in the home and to essentially marry the state. And fatherlessness is an epidemic that has been discussed at length, and we know the stats on this. 20 times more likely to end up in prison are the kids that grow up without a father in the home. But none of them bring this up, not even once. And this is because they are brainwashed by a liberal media industrial complex and the Democratic Party to believe that there is a white boogeyman trying to hold them back in life and that they should be afraid and that they are in fact perpetual victims, and that this victim complex is completely justified. And it's quite sinister when you really think about it. And Thomas Sowell also discusses the reason why these liberal politicians are so eager to perpetuate these destructive policies. Why is that? Well, it's good for them. It keeps them in power. If they were to introduce policies that helped people to assimilate, to gain more financial independence, and ultimately independence from the government and from the welfare state, these people wouldn't need the government anymore. They wouldn't be relying on handouts. And perhaps they would stop voting for them. And so the rest of the video was incredibly frustrating, and the students took it upon themselves to start blocking off his cameras and chanting and shouting at him and also calling the police. So let's have a look at a few of the highlights from that. And then I'm going to discuss exactly why this is wrong and the power of communication.
Somebody stand in front, please.
Hey, my thing is, if y'all don't want to be a part of the conversation, y'all don't have to be here. I think that's the thing, y'all. I'm not trying to.
Yeah.
Do you have hobbies aside from harassing black students at HBCU?
I'm not harassing anybody. I'm sitting here and you choose to come up here.
No, what does Make America Great Again mean to you? Do you not feel like that's racist? Like, what that stood for?
No, I think that it just acknowledges that America used to be a great country and it's not anymore. And it just wants to be made great again.
But that's racist. Make America Great Again is bad because how was America ever great? How was America ever great? What did America ever stand for other than racism?
Excellence.
What was excellent about America?
We invented the modern world.
Who is we? Okay, who is
America.
we?
America.
You're saying America was
So, I just, we talked about things like slavery. We talked about things. No, we're not. You can't take our property, actually. You're making your students look so bad right now. We were trying to have productive conversation. You are making us look bad. You don't have the authority to do that. We are within our rights.
You're on our public property.
No, it's all of our public property. Just because we don't go here doesn't mean it's not ours. Doesn't matter. We are within our rights to be here. You are interrupting that for no reason.
What?
I'm talking to him first.
What? Give me that! Give me that! Give me that!
So, we talked about things like slavery, generational wealth, police, and we traded statistics, and it's kind of gotten to a point where a lot of people have decided instead of sitting down and talking, they would rather just shut down the conversation as a whole, which is unfortunate because the whole point was to try to show we can still have conversations in this country.
I'm trying to have a... I mean, I want to get his...
Hey, don't worry about them. Do y'all want to be entertainment or not? If y'all want to be entertainment, stay here. If you want to be entertainment, stay here.
They're really giving you content.
Why are we going to be entertainment? What are we arguing?
Turn the cameras off. Y'all are, but...
Hey! Goodbye!
I would love to have a conversation with you.
Maybe another time. Maybe another time.
I wish I had a conversation with you, bro. I'm like, damn.
I appreciate it. What's your name? John, nice to meet you. You can find it on YouTube as John Doyle. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day. You pushed one of our students. Please get off our campus.
The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be televised.
Hey, hey! Ho, ho! These racist people has got to go! Hey, hey! Ho, ho! These racist people has got to go! Hey, hey! Ho, ho! These racist people has got to go!
Right now, this is becoming a hazard to everyone. Do you agree?
Respectfully, I disagree.
You disagree.
Do you mind if I give my opinion?
Go ahead.
And then I think that we have a table set up, and for about an hour and a half, we had a really productive discussion.
Right.
And people are kind of getting aggravated, which is understandable, but I don't think we're causing that.
But again, understand where you are.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah.
I'm not telling you you cannot exercise your right.
Yes, sir.
We would like for you to leave at this point.
So there we have it, guys. A disgraceful display by those students. And honestly, a perfect example of how devastating the victim mentality can truly be. Dialogue is always the answer, without a shadow of a doubt. And what these students are doing here, by shutting down this dialogue, is sinking deeper and deeper into an ideological echo chamber. An echo chamber whereby they think that white people are inherently bad and oppressive, and that they are victims of the system. And unfortunately, if you watch the full video on John's channel, you will see that this happens time and time and time again. And this video that I'm doing is only a small distillation of all of this. And furthermore, this echo chamber that they are a part of is a racist one, and one of extreme entitlement, where they believe that because of the historical events where people who looked like them were oppressed, that they now, despite having never lived through any of that, have the right to be racist to people who look like people doing the oppressing. It's an extremely backwards mentality, and honestly, just such a pitiful one, because closed-mindedness and victimhood breeds misery. And last point I'll make is that there is a man named Daryl Davis. You guys might have heard of him. He's a remarkable African-American man that actually goes to Klan rallies, and through starting a dialogue and ultimately creating a relationship with actual white supremacists, and through strong communication, rapport building, and open-mindedness towards your fellow human being, he allowed these people to actually see the error in their ways and to leave the KKK. Daryl Davis is a man that understands the power of communication and utilizes this extremely powerful tool to make a positive change in the world. He is the very embodiment of somebody who is the change that they want to see in the world. And the question that he asks these Klan members when he sees them is a very profound one. How can you hate me when you don't even know me? And this would have been a great question for John to have up his sleeve during this video. So guys, with that, make sure you hit the link in the top of the comments and the bio. Got so much going on at the moment. Got our Spotify with amazing podcasts coming up. We have got our clips channel, our travel channel. Instagram, Twitter. It's all happening at Rattlesnake TV. So hit those links top of the comments and in the bio. And if you guys want to watch another video, click right here. Until next time, I'm Jake. This is Rattlesnake TV, keeping you armed and dangerous.